I'm Thomas, and you're listening to the Racing Podcast, where today we're going to talk about the UCI Gravel World Series. And to this end, right now, I'm joined by two magnificent guests, one being Rosa Klöser. Hi, Rosa.
Hi.
And the other one, Paul Voss.
Hello.
And I believe if we, the three of us, did a podcast, it would definitely already be a good one. But we are waiting for our actual main guest today, and that is Erwin Vervecken of Golazo, the company that is running the UCI Gravel World Series. And we invited Erwin on to tell us about the series and to talk about some of the subjects that came up during this past 2025 season, because there were, frankly, various topics that were seen critical in the community that people discussed about. And Erwin was kind enough to say, hey, he is going to jump on the show to talk through these. Rosa, let's begin with you. What are you most curious about? What is the angle that you're most interested in, and what would you like to learn from today's conversation?
Yes, I would, of course, in general, like to understand the vision from the UCI that they have long-term for gravel and gravel racing, and especially how they see the interplay between elite racers and mass participation. We've seen an enormous growth in the series in terms of events. And sometimes when you scale up things, things become a bit rocky. And I want to understand, what kind of concept they're using for scaling up these events and for ensuring quality. And then, of course, a concern that I definitely have as a female is the role of females within these races, and especially, of course, from my position, the elite racers, how we will deal with concerns such as safety going forward in the races, but also the fairness aspect as well, considering that for a couple of racers, this is now how they actually secure their livelihood. So definitely curious to see what Erwin is going to say about these things.
Paul, what about you?
Actually, Rosa said already all the topics which are also important for me. So, thanks, Rosa. I got a really short intro. I got a short intro. We're gonna get the same things like how he sees the series developing in the next years, and like security and safety in general, and if there are actually any guidelines they have for the organizers, or if the organizers just have to pay the fee and then they can do what they want.
I mean, the one angle that obviously maybe I will add to this is the coverability, the media side of the UCI series. If you follow along the stuff that I'm writing on the internet, I've been, to an extent, critical about mostly the lack of coverage, because I would love to talk more about it and cover it more, but there is so little visibility into the professional side of these races that it's hard to do so. So I'm really curious to see where this conversation goes, and also I think it's also fair to acknowledge right away from the get-go, it's pretty cool that Erwin jumps on to talk about all this, because there is no obligation to do so. So let's see what we are getting into. So now we are joined by Erwin Vervecken. Hi, Erwin. Thanks a lot for taking the time and making it through a traffic jam, as you told me.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be in the podcast.
So just to explain to you and also to everybody listening a bit about the setting and how this came to be. Of course, you are in charge, and we will hear a bit more from you about the details of this in a second. But broadly, you are in charge of the UCI Gravel World Series, and there, you took large strides in building the series over the last years on the one hand side, and on the other hand side, there were also some topics among the pros, among the fans following this that were a bit critical. And why I invited you and invited Paul and Rosa on top is to almost set up like a roundtable conversation where the point where I'm, and I guess we are all coming from, is we want gravel to succeed. We want the gravel ecosystem to become a sustainable ecosystem, is the way I like to put it. And we want the best for essentially all the actors in the field, and that is why I'm super glad that you said, look, I'm coming on and I'm talking to you guys over about the topics that are. And to kick things off, I would like to hear from you a bit about the setup that you're in, which is specifically also for our listeners important to get the whole picture. So there is the UCI that is running the series, but you are employed by a company, correct me if my pronunciation is wrong, is called Golazo. You are organizing on the behalf of the UCI, and your role is essentially you are heading the Gravel World Series on top or in addition to other things that you're also responsible for. But tell the people what I missed and how it works.
Yeah, so I used to be a pro rider from 1995 till 2010. Not sure, Paul, if we rode together maybe in the last years. So 2010, were you already elite? I don't know.
No, I was still under. We rode against each other. Like I was still under 23, but I did a few elite races or elite UCI races in Belgium. And as like a in-hard like cyclocross rider, I of course know you, as a rider.
Yeah, well, I know you from name, but and of course now also with the gravel. And at that time, I knew you, but I wasn't sure if we rode together.
I think so. Yeah.
Maybe 1 or 2 years, or when you were a junior.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I retired from cycling 2010, then started to work for Golazo, which is a Belgian sports marketing company, mainly for cyclocross in the beginning. But in the summer, of course, there's a few months without cyclocross. I needed another project. And we just started the what is called now the UCI Gravel World Series. So a similar series of mass participation events for road cycling, mainly focusing on masters. So riders 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old who still want to race at a high level. They have the Gravel World Series with every year also the Gravel World Championships, which is actually the same like gravel now, apart from the elites. So there's no elite racing there. And I am doing that series since 2011. Now for 2026, it's also 35 races. It's worldwide. It's in all continents, in all 5 continents. And in 2019, during the debriefing with the UCI at the UCI headquarters in Switzerland, and because I was already following a few years the growth of gravel racing, and with my background in cyclocross, I proposed to Peter van den Abele, who is the director of sports of the UCI, and also an ex-teammate of me. We used to be teammates in 1995, 1996, I think. I proposed him, hey, I see the popularity of gravel growing. It was mainly an American thing in, let's say 2005 till 2015. I don't think there were any big races in Europe before 2015. And then 2019, we proposed to make a similar series like the Gravel World Series in gravel. The goal was to start in 2020, but then, of course, COVID came. COVID prevented an early launch. 2020, 2021, we had to wait. But 22, and I guess Rosa and Paul did races from the very first season. We had 11 races, which I had been slowly building up in those 2 years, with the first World Championships in Italy. And I think the first year was quite small, 200, 300, 400 riders per race. Probably the biggest one, I don't think we had a race over 1,000 riders. Probably the biggest one was in Australia, Ennufalis at that time, 900 riders, if I remember well. Mm-hmm. But the first World Championships in Italy, the week before, all of a sudden we had Pauline Ferrand-Prévot at the start line. She was just mountain bike world champion, mountain bike marathon world champion the weeks before. We had Mathieu van der Poel at the start. We had Peter Sagan at the start, and then it all exploded the next year because all of a sudden gravel was booming and was a hype, and everybody wanted to do it. So, and then second year, I think we had 18 qualifier events. Third year, 25. Last year, 35, and now 45. So it's really big.
It's cool because one of the questions on my list was whether it was like the UCI's or your impulse. You already answered this. So nowadays in running this, how much freedom do you have versus how much is your counterpart on the UCI side involved?
Well, initially I suggested, of course, I need always the backup from the UCI, but sure. I suggested the regulations. I updated from time to time. We have every year a debriefing in which we discuss the growth of the series, the popularity of the sport, what needs to be improved. I remember 2 years ago that we set a maximum of 2 events per country, except for the real big countries like the States, Canada, Australia, and China. Those 4 countries, we can have 3 events, but all the other countries, maximum 2 events. And the next topic we are going to discuss, and that's scheduled for next week, is also a further limit on the total number of events, because with 45 and probably there are a few more joining in the next weeks, it's really getting very big. So one of the things we want to maintain is the prestige of the series, and nobody is happy with a series of 100 events. Also not the organizers, but also for the riders, it's better to have a limited number of high-level, good, well-organized events. So and that's to be discussed with the UCI. But of course, well, it's a cooperation. I'm the guy in the field who visits the events, who speaks to the riders, and who tries to improve the quality. But on the UCI side, it also needs to be to have a backup from the UCI legal department and from the different federations.
And how did you end up with 45 races for this year? I mean, you just mentioned like it just growed already too big.
Yeah, it's at this moment. Well, I think we should limit the number of events to probably 40 maximum. Well, in the beginning, I had to look for events. I had to contact them. I had to negotiate with them, sell events. It's. I felt almost like a salesperson. But then, in the last 2 years, I hardly approach an event anymore. They approach me. They know where to find me. They mail me. They ask for information, and it's growing naturally. We have a very good economic benefit report, which I send to the different organizers, and with that they can approach local authorities, cities, regions, and well, you've seen the calendar. It's especially in South America that we grow very big. So it's good to grow also in other continents. We have another additional event in South Africa now. I think two in Colombia, one in Argentina, one in Chile, which is an add-on to the series. I'm also speaking to an organizer in Japan. It's not 100% confirmed yet, but he might join later. The same happens with tree rides, so the contract wasn't signed in time. But it's, of course, our goal to also put them on the calendar. It's really growing very fast, yeah.
How many people are on the team? Because if people hear it's the UCI series, I guess many people are envisioning that it's a big operation. But I mean, I also don't know, but I would be surprised if you say there are more than 10 people in your team, if that even.
Golazo itself is 400 employees, but
no, yeah, sure. But I mean, just specifically for the gravel series.
Yeah. No. It's not so much. I have one person helping me with social media. I have one person helping me with more the let's say the management side, the budget and everything, the financial part. But the contact with the organizers and the sports technical part is only me. And then I have one colleague at the UCI who is also my backup. To check and double check things with the UCI, and of course do the World Championships. So it's a rather small team, yes.
If you would describe your vision for the series, and you don't have to talk about like your competitors, but acknowledging that there are also other series in gravel. I'm also curious about the positioning that you see for the UCI Gravel World Series in contrast to the other big ones that are out there.
Yes. So, well, the biggest competitor probably is the Lifetime Series in the States. They have, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 events.
6 this year and last
6 this year, or well, I checked their schedule a few days ago. From a sports technical side, they are much longer races. They are races of 8 to 10 hours. We discussed that in the beginning, and we decided right away from the beginning that we wanted to have gravel races with a duration which is the same as a normal road race, 5-6 hours maximum, even 4 hours. So that's been decided from the beginning that we don't want to have like those ultra races of 200 miles, 320 kilometers. Like
can you talk about why you decided this? Because that's interesting that it was from early on very clear to you.
Because, well, I think it's first of all, the base of our series is mainly in Europe. It's a worldwide series, but well, more than half of the races are in Europe. And it's the biggest challenge for organizers, and that's what often riders forget, and also people who are not organizing is road traffic management. So if you close down a full loop for 10-hour race in Europe, it's almost impossible, or it's very hard to achieve. We have a few races like the Gralloch or the one in Wales. I haven't visited that one, but the Gralloch, for instance, is a perfect example where you can put up an event of 10 hours with one big loop and finish and don't have any problems with traffic because it's in a very remote area. I don't know if both of you have ridden it already, the Gralloch?
Yeah, I've been there, yeah.
Yeah. And Rosa, no?
No.
Okay. But it's a super well-organized event. It's one of the best organized events in the series. They have a super nice course. It's an amazing course. But unfortunately, well, like in Germany, the race in Singen, the race in Aachen, well, Aachen actually disappeared because of road traffic regulations and restrictions. And it's very hard to achieve it. And on top, well, I think we are a mass participation event. There's a lot of amateurs. If you go and talk about the 10-hour race, well, Unbound, for instance, is a hype, and you have a lot of people traveling specifically for Unbound, but having 20 or 30 races in Europe on a regular base, lasting 10 hours, it would be for a limited public. So, no, we decided to go for a race of 4, 5, 6 hours.
And then back to your vision, because I sidetracked you a little bit. So that's one of the things. Then from the beginning, we also decided to add the elites. In the beginning, the qualification was per age group, but then the second year we added a dedicated elite category. Well, compared to the Lifetime Series, the big difference still is they have quite a big amount of prize money. It's also my goal to at a certain time have it, but to be honest, a lot of organizers don't have the capability yet financially
to pay a lot of prize money. So we'll have to introduce it slowly. But the first goal is to have an overall ranking, general classification. We kind of have a ranking now, but it's not like a series ranking. It's more a point ranking, which is now the base of the start order. But that's also one of the goals. And then, of course, the focus in the last 4 years was mainly building the series and growing it, being represented in almost all countries. That was the goal in the first 3-4 years. Now the goal is to probably maintain the quality or increase the quality, but replace a few weaker organizers with very professional teams. I see that more and more professional sport event marketing companies are looking at organizing a gravel event, and that's where we have to go to. That it's not some local club who started organizing a gravel event with 100 or 200 riders 5-6 years ago. Some of them are really capable of shifting up to a higher level, but some are not. And then, it's better to replace them with professional teams who are good in also the marketing behind it, the social media coverage behind it. That's the goal.
So you said like you're working closely together with the UCI, but like mainly all the, like say the framework comes from your side, from Golazo. It doesn't mean like there are actually no big safety requirements from the UCI. So let's say the races have to be in closed traffic. The races have to have as many ambulances per, I don't know, participant and so on. So is there actually like a guideline for the organizer, or is it just like, so the organizer is paying the fee, you're sending someone from the UCI to the races who checks a few things, but like there's no, like, let's say, like massive guideline? Because what I feel is that not all races are on the same level regarding safety and also road closure. So you mentioned Kralok is, of course, I mean, I've been there, and as you said, you could ride there for days without traffic and you don't have to close anything. But like, I know in Germany and also in Belgium, I think there's like actually rules from the governments where as soon as it is a race, it has to be on closed roads. But I don't know how it is, for example, in the Netherlands or in Spain. We often have the problem that we even UCI events, we're actually riding in traffic or cars coming towards us and so on. And so what is your job on this side? And is UCI actually pushing there towards more safety races?
Yeah, of course, safety is super important. That's the key element. And we have an organizer guide. So we are pushing to have fully closed roads. It's not mandatory. It's also not mandatory in Grand Fondo racing. Certain countries allow, in France, for instance, all the mass participation events are on open roads, which is not what we prefer, but it's often also you have to cope with local legislation. And in gravel, in general, it's quite okay because in 80 or 90% of the time you're somewhere away in the forest or in on a farmer track without too many traffic. In Belgium, the restrictions are quite hard, especially for road closures. Well, it needs to be on closed roads. You can pass like a major road, but then there has to be police, and they can allow cross traffic. I know Germany, also Björn Müller. He has had quite a big challenge to close the roads in Aachen, and it's very hard to organize it there. And that's also one of the reasons why he moved to Winterberg now. But you remember the very first edition of Aachen was a very good one. Apart from the track was too small. 20K loop was then that's where I noticed. Okay, we need to have another regulation on the minimum distance per lap, because I was in that race myself, and I got overlapped after 2 hours of racing or so. It was super hectic. So then we decided to make a loop of at least 40K. But then the second year was not a good example. Together with the Gran Fondo, it was it was quite a disaster. But the last edition was again very good. But it's a challenge. It's in certain countries, it's a big challenge to achieve road closures, and that's often where we get the criticism compared to, for instance, a race like Unbound. I've never been in Unbound, but I heard it's in a very remote area. You hardly see any traffic. But I don't know if there is any way traffic on the road sometimes, or is it completely closed for 300k for full duration?
I mean, there also, I mean, the first years when I did it, there was actually like still a traffic light, like 300 meters from the line, where if it was red, you have to stop. The police was kindly enough to let us go through, but like the regulation said like, and that you have to stop, but now they changed it as well. But yeah, there's also sometimes traffic, but the main problem I see is that like it's so remote that ambulances reaching injured riders is quite difficult. And that's also like one of the topics I had this year, like a European race and the last UCI qualifier race in France, where I crashed and broke my collarbone. The time it took that an ambulance came to me, or actually someone helped me, was actually ridiculous. And I thought that was quite insane, that like it seems like a big organization around the race, that they were not capable of like looking after like an injured rider. And that was kind of scary to see that, because if someone actually crashes really heavily in the forest, I mean, I'm old enough now. I know with a broken collarbone, I can keep kind of riding on my bike and to the next main road and get to someone who can call an ambulance. But I feel sometimes there needs to be more done, like to actually ensure that if something happens, ambulances can reach a certain point really quickly. And I think that's still a big thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely right. It is a big challenge. Safety now, a collarbone is let's say still quite manageable.
Yeah, exactly.
But, let's say that one day there is somebody with a heart attack where you need to be there within a few minutes to save a life. It's one of the big challenges for gravel because, most of these roads, you can't follow the race with an ambulance. We have a few motorcycles in the race, but it's always a combination. I can talk for Belgium, for instance, and I guess it's the same in most countries. We have an agency controlling the access to the forests. It's quite restricted, so and you have to ask permission, and then they say, okay, you can organize here if you stay on the main roads. But no following cars, only the motorcycle opening the race, the motorcycle closing the race, and in between, like with the World Championships, they allow, by big exception, also the TV motor cameras on the motor in the race. But it's quite a challenge to get permission to use the forest. But it's a system we have to work on, and what we do with our own races is we have points where you have a marshal. Every few hundred meters there's a marshal, and if something is happening, we hope that the rider after you, if they see a rider crashing and or they see a rider on the side of the road with probably a heart attack, that they shout to the next marshal, who then can contact by cell phone and call up an ambulance very quickly. But it is a challenge. It's the same in mountain bike marathon. It's quite challenging. We have a nice project, but that's one of the things which is one of the challenges of every organizer.
So there's there's like no guidelines that like, all right, you have to have as many ambulances or like, let's say motorbikes, off-road motorbikes per so and so many participants. There's no such rule.
There is a rule in the general organizational guide, but of course it depends. If you have a race with 200 or 400 riders compared to the big races with 3,000, so I should have a look. I think it's minimum 2, but of course 2 with 2,000 or 3,000 riders is not enough. But a lot of those rules also depend on local legislation. So we always say the the race should be organized with according to local legislations for ambulances and for first aid.
Rosa?
But may I chip in here and ask, who's checking this then? So let's say the local legislation in each country is different, of course. Does the organizer have to send some proof of concept or an employment contract of let's say 4 ambulances per race, or is this something where you trust the organizer for this to happen?
For a first edition, so new events have to send us a candidature guide, in which also they have to put in, besides all the sports technical details, also a safety plan, and that's being checked for the first edition. It also needs to be checked by the National Federation. So there's always what they call a PCP, so a president of the commissaires panel at every event, appointed by the National Federation. And then, I often also, I try to be at most new events, but of course I can't be everywhere. And then it's, I often get the feedback from riders, from other riders, or from the head of jury who has been at an event. But it's not that we count. We count a bit on the responsibility of the organizer together with the National Federation in each country.
I mean, that is obviously an issue, the safety that all the other series and all events struggle with. I don't think there is a perfect solution, but so for instance, what I saw at Gravel Burn, I don't know if you followed this race, which of course was rather remote in South Africa, and they had 2 medical motorbikes per pro field, and then some with the amateurs as well. So 2 for the women pros, 2 for the men pros, and for the amateurs, which of course, I mean, that costs money. That is clear. And the way you're describing it, and also what my perception is, there is some organizers come from a very different professional background than others who seem to be doing not that many events. But do you think, and who even makes this decision, that you need to give more hard guidelines, also scale dependent, for instance? You said there is a minimum of 2, but maybe a minimum of 2 per 500 riders in the race or so. And who are the UCI making this call?
Well, it's based on the mass participation guidelines who have been there from the UCI since the early beginning. So the minimum is 2, and then it's per 500 riders. It's an extra. To be honest, I don't know the details, but most of the events do have a motorcycle or a quad who is driving around us. So at our events, for instance, we position ambulances spread over the course, so they are always nearby in case something happens. But you can't guarantee that any rider anywhere on course will have a medical support or somebody there, an ambulance within 15 minutes. It really depends on the situation. We've had the case at the Road World Championships in Zurich 2 years ago, where there was a young lady junior who was just a bit behind, and in a small corner she missed a turn, went in a wood, and she wasn't found until a few hours later. We can try to make it as good as possible and hopefully prevent that kind of accidents, but it's the disadvantage of having a race on a big loop in full nature. It's impossible to have a motorcycle following every 100 riders, because that's also often not allowed from the agencies protecting the forests.
Yeah, there are many stakeholders in putting together such a race. That much is clear. One thing that sprung to my eye when I looked at this year's series is that I think when you announced it in a press release, you already mentioned that it's going to be brought closer together with the Gran Fondo series that you already mentioned. You're also in charge of. And then when the races were released, I saw first gravel races organized by events that had been in the Gran Fondo series. So I assume the same promoter is also running the gravel races. What is the idea here and the plan going forward?
Well, as explained, we started in 2022, 23. The main goal was to build the series, to have to make. As a World Series, we have to be represented in all continents. And in the first 2 years, I don't think we had an event in Asia. So this year was Thailand. Well, in the very first year, we had a race in the Philippines, but then 23, 24, nothing. My focus was on growing the series and making the knowledge of the UCI Gravel World Series spread all over the world. And now we are an achieved series. The next goal is indeed to increase safety, or increase the quality of the event in general. And safety is, of course, a major aspect of it. I'm not going to mention names, but at this moment there are still 5 to 10 organizers in the 45 who are not the standard that we hope to achieve. As Rosa and Paul, you have also done events where you are at the start or the finish line, and the look and feel and the general atmosphere is not that of a UCI event. So the goal is to replace them in the next few years and hopefully have more professional teams behind it, and a more professional team are also better run in terms of it's not only safety, it's also marketing, it's also social media coverage, even live TV. We are at this moment working on a concept to bring certain races in the qualifier series. So we have already the World Championships live on television. But we are also working on a deal to bring certain races live on television. And 26, a few as a test. 27, it's the goal to bring 10 races live on television, not streaming. So really live television. And that's how we want to increase the quality and the prestige of the series.
That is big news, actually, if this is going to happen, because this year, so when Paul and I started to work on podcasts together, the goal we had is to especially cover more of the European racing scene. And also in my writing, I'm interested in it. I'm from Europe. I want to feature it and shine a light on it. And at some point, I more or less gave up on covering UCI Gravel World Series races, just because there was so little coverage from the events. And then I talked to organizers and I asked if there is like some on this and minimum requirements that you guys sent to them, and they said no, it's not. It's out in the open, and the result was just that it, from a fan perspective, because like me, I mostly look at gravel as a fan and the occasional age grouper who quote unquote races in events. And from that perspective, it was just very hard to follow it. And of course, live streaming came to gravel, I would say, big time this year. I wrote the piece about the average viewership, and I think there were 9 live streams. I had to exclude the World Championships, actually, because they were not only a live stream, they were mostly a TV product, and then you don't get viewership number, and it was geo-blocked on YouTube in most locations where it was on TV, so you couldn't compare it. But with the move towards TV, that is going to change.
Of course, and that's also the next step we want to achieve. When talking about a few weaker organizers, of course, we are very thankful for them, and they did a good job in increasing the number of events and make awareness of gravel racing. But often they come from a local club who once started a gravel event with 100 riders, and then they moved up to a more international event. In the years 2017, 18, 19, there were hardly any events in Europe. So people started to organize gravel events. They had a nice course, and at that time that was very important. But of course, with the professionalism, also the social media coverage and live stream and everything which is connected to that is also very important. And I see certain organizers who really struggle with that. I'm still very sad to see after an event. I always, if I'm not there, I always try to get pictures as fast as possible. But then, those organizers, it's sometimes even a team of 2, 3, 4 people who on Sunday evening, have 2 or 3 days of work, packing everything back together and all the logistics on spot. And then on Wednesday, they start to look at their mails and see, there's a mail and we should send pictures. And then I get 2 or 3 pictures from a cell phone from one of the volunteers who took a picture at the start, and then maybe one from the podium, and that's it. So, I think if the next step, every big organizer should have a media team, social media coverage, live stories on Instagram, things like that. That's very important, and that's what we hope to achieve with all organizers in the next few years.
Yeah, so to me, it sounds a bit like that the whole series, and I mean gravel in general, it's just growing too fast. And like, I don't want to use the word greedy because I think that's not the right word for it. But that we are just like on a point where like everything goes a bit too quickly, and that we are maybe like losing a bit of track of like what we actually want to do with the sport. So sometimes feel like we are so we just like actually moving a bit too quickly for the development of the sport, but like the organizers, the media, no one really can follow. It's not like growing as quickly as all other things around it does. Yeah.
No, you're totally right. I'm still approached every year by 10 organizers who tell me, hey, look at this course. I have a really great course. And then they send me 10 pictures of a training ride they did on a course. And of course, that's important. You as a rider, if you do courses like the Grelloc or the race in Piemonte, Monsterrato was in the beginning. Now the last 2 years it was called Monsterando. Great course, lovely scenery, great gravel racing. But then the next step, the Grelloc is a perfect example of a very professional team behind. It's the team who also organized the Tour of Cambridgeshire, so the biggest Gran Fondo we once had in the Gran Fondo World Series with 8,000 riders. It's 1 hour north of London. So they managed that, and it's a very professional team with a very good social media coverage, good marketing behind. But the guy in Piemonte, and that's he's now disappeared from the series too. Great course, and I want to thank him for all the efforts he did. But it's a very small team, and they are really struggling. They are not. There's also a business behind it. The big sports marketing companies, they have a few salespeople selling partner packages. They approach a city or a region to go and talk to the local politicians to try and raise some money there. I think in Europe, 80, 85, maybe 90% of the events get some kind of fundings from a city or a region to bring an event, and then you have more money to also build up all the side things. So hire 2 or 3 professional organizers, hire a TV team or a video team who can right away after the finish have like a movie from the event. The look and feel of such an event is much better, and that's what we want to achieve. And certain organizers, can't follow that pace.
Yeah, but maybe I can chip in here a little bit, because I think there's a lot of like really positive and good ideas. But like, to relate a little bit to Paul's point, it still feels like by adding that many events every year, especially also from your side with being a rather small team, it of course gets incredibly challenging also for you to then actually be in this direct contact with all the organizers and support them. And how it sounds right now, I'm coming from a business background myself. It sounds a little bit like, to me, okay, in the future, at one point, we will only have the richest marketing sports companies left who can invest all the money into the big events. And then we will actually see events in areas where big companies want to support it, rather than maybe in some more dispersed, unique places where you can actually have a nice gravel feel. So maybe, to reflect on that point. And then the second point is, I don't know, because we've been pushing a little bit about these guidelines in order to kind of understand, of course, maybe not everything is mandatory, but is there some way to support the organizers in getting to the basics? Like, is there like a best practice guide, for instance, for the organizers to say, okay, maybe we don't need a professional TV team that takes a video right away, but maybe there's like some best practices of like, this is how you could integrate live stories, for instance. Should they have like an Instagram account, all the organizers, like some, basics that are not as costly to implement, but that could already like, help the organizers improve a lot this way?
Yeah, of course. We do that. I try to go to all new events. I think, especially in Europe, I've been to 90% of the events. Once or twice or three times, but most of the time I try to go to the first event. And then I send them a post-event report in which I stipulate, okay, safety, which is the key point, of course, but also just advice and also an advice on how to improve not only the safety and the regulation side, which of course is important, but also from some guidelines on social media, on easy things to implement. Everybody has in their team a young guy or some family member who is very well trained in social media and making some videos with a cell phone and then post them right away on an Instagram account. It doesn't cost a lot of money. If you ask a local volunteer or even a marshal, ask them to film on a nice stretch in a wood or in an off-road section, make a film, send it right away from via WhatsApp to the organizer, and then the organizer can put it online or even directly. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. But of course, there is also a business side. I know for riders, the sports side is very important, and that's the base, and the safety is very important. But riders and also organizers benefit from events being more professional. At this moment, I know a few organizers are really struggling to just make a break even from their event. And it's not because they are doing a bad job, but because I often tell them, okay, go and talk to your local authorities and try to get some support, some fundings. But of course, then you have to prove first what you can bring to the local economy, how to approach sponsors, how to attract more riders. If an organizer sends me 3 cell phone pictures after an event, one from the start where riders are waiting and one from the podium, it's not appealing the next year to attract more riders, unfortunately, because I get a lot of mails from riders and they look at our Instagram page or our Facebook page and look at all those different pictures from events, and they see, oh, this is a cool event, I go there next year. But that's often because there's a professional team behind who have 100 or 200 nice pictures taken by a professional organizer. compared to another event who is also very great, but yeah, they don't have the exposure as some professional teams. So it is also part. It's sports comes from an organization was done by clubs 20, 30, 40 years ago. All the major sports events in the 80s, in the 90s were organized by clubs. And now there's professional teams behind. Look at the Tour de France. In the 70s and 80s was a rather, it's not a local event, but it's become much more professional. And also riders and organizers benefit from it.
I couldn't agree more, and I think I want to come back to this topic because I have one or two media talking points. But I'm also aware that Rosa, she has a follow-up appointment, sponsorship obligations that need to be taken care of, and there is one topic that I definitely think we need to talk about, and it's one where Rosa is probably the best spokesperson for the topic, namely the women's pro racing at the events. I think you are aware that there was a fair amount of public pushback against how this is handled during the 2025 season. And I would ask you, Rosa, maybe just go ahead and talk a bit about the experiences that you had and that you found suboptimal in the series so far. And compare it also to what happens at other races.
Yeah, for sure. All that is being said is, of course, always taken hopefully from a constructive point of view. And I think the clear intention from everyone, from the elite racers that at least I have spoken with, is to actually improve on the series. But I think, yeah, there have been multiple occasions, I think, starting with the fact that there is simply a lack of communication. So when I'm showing up to a UCI World Gravel Series race, I oftentimes only know maybe the day in advance how my start will actually take place. So I have very often experienced a situation where I didn't, in advance to signing up to a race, knew, okay, will this today be a mixed race? Will this be a start that is separated by a matter of just 1-2 minutes, and behind which category am I starting? Why am I bringing this up? Because sometimes it's said like, okay, but why are you signing up for a race if you don't like the format? Because sometimes I'm not aware of the format, only the day before. And then secondly, of course, I mean, I know that I'm in a privileged situation, but these days there are a lot, or not a lot, but a significant amount of female and male racers who make their livelihood from gravel racing. And they go to these events as part of their job. So it's kind of also my obligation to go to some of the events. And I think, so the communication, first of all, needs to be improved so that people can actually make an active decision if they want to put themselves in this environment. And then secondly, from an experience point of view, I think I've brought this up before. I think especially on races that have less elevation, so altitude meters, it becomes often the situation in these UCI Gravel series that groups are mixed. So different pelotons are mixed. And that's female pelotons and male pelotons. And I mean, I think the most prominent example, or the point where really like a lot of people became vocal, was this year's Gravel 150, because there we had the situation that really multiple pelotons mixed. The women did have a separate start, but they were quickly caught by the men's age group 19 to 34. So the women started behind the elite men. And at this point, the race really went south in a way that it really became a fight between the women elite, the age groups, and then actually to top it off in the final, we actually on the finishing shoot, so on the last K, we caught a shorter distance race. I don't know exactly which age group this was, but we ended up in a sprint with around, 50 or 60 people. And I must say, in the end of the day, this is not to only complain from a women's perspective, but this is more on behalf of maybe everyone that was involved in the race, because I've been shouting, the people have been shouting, and it was in the end a group sprint from 3 different categories, which was super dangerous. And it also created a situation for every participant involved that they were uncomfortable with. And I think these situations simply need to be avoided. And that needs to be taken in consideration from one's safety perspective, because it's simply true that most female riders are just lighter and more fragile than men, and racing them and going into a single track is just different. I think I made a good example. In a race, it's about safety, and I can confidently say in a women's peloton, I can more define my luck or my safety than in a men's peloton, because in a women's peloton, I have the legs to enter the section first. I can't be expected to outsprint like a 19-year-old man for the entry into a section, I would say. So I think that's a point that needs to be taken into consideration. And then fairness, and then especially when it comes to the elite fields, as what I've brought up, the situation is that this is now a job. And especially if the UCI series wants to be part in growing it as a professional sport, there needs to be action on this, because otherwise this job will also not be seen as serious. Because, I mean, in the end, you brought it up with the TV coverage. This is something I'm super excited about, but especially there, I don't think that the viewership would be keen in seeing like these kind of mixed race scenarios, where it's unclear to identify how the race is actually going. So yeah, these are a couple of the main points that I would actually like to understand where the UCI Gravel Series sees themselves and what's their vision. I mean, I think it's most important that we get like a clear communication to understand, okay, is growing the elite sport a priority of the UCI Gravel World Series? If that's not the case, that's also okay. But I think there needs to be like a communication and maybe also a vision on how to approach these issues going forward.
Yeah, well, thanks. And first of all, I totally agree with all your remarks. I think in the ideal world, we have totally separate races for women elite or women age groups also, as at the World Championships. The World Championships, we have the women elite race starting 15 minutes prior to the men age groups. And well, luckily, they've never been caught. Well, probably in the back, yes, but let's say the race was fair and was open, and that's the ideal world. We also have the race in Wales, where there's a separate women race on Saturday. And we have a few races like the Grelloch, where the women start. I remember when I was there, they started 1 hour and a half earlier. And nowadays, I think they start an hour or an hour and a half later. That's the ideal scenario, and that's where we hope to get towards in future years. Unfortunately, I'm also on the organizer side, and I also see the meetings with different local authorities. And you know the case from Aachen, for instance. It's one of the biggest challenges of an organizer is getting permits for road closures. In the beginning, I remember in the very first year, we had them all start together. And I remember also after the very first year, or was it the second year, I did a survey amongst the women elite to ask them, hey, what is the ideal scenario for you? Where do you want to start? You want to start with the men elite together as a mixed race? You want to have separate races in the back or as a second one? And at that time, the replies from the different women elite I asked were a bit mixed. So some said, well, if we are only at that time, often only 10, 15 riders, we prefer to have, if it's less than 10 riders, to start with the men. If it's 20, 30 riders, then we want to have our separate race. And I must be honest, well, what happened this year in Gravel 150 was not correct. And it is an option in our regulations, but we have to update that for next year. That's something, let's say, how do you say it in I know the Dutch name for it, but it's you learn from year after year. And I think what we already did in our races, and in most of the races, I give it as an advice. We have been checking the average speed of the women elite compared to the age groups, and in most, if it's a hilly race, often the women elite go as fast as the men, 50-55. If it's a flat race, the women elites average pace is around the speed of the women of the men, 55, 59, even 60, 64. So that's where we try to position them. I remember 2 years ago there was only 1 minute intervals between the different groups. Last year we had 2 minutes. We already spoke to some of the organizers, and now I'm speaking about our own races, but I also often give it as an advice to organizers. Well, first of all, to try to make the intervals bigger, and if possible, have like a real big interval for the women. But that's where the big challenge is for the organizers. Often, like I remember in Aachen, the local authorities said, okay, from the first rider to the last rider, there's a 40-minute gap. And if you're more than 40 minutes behind, you're taking out of the race. It's not that traffic is already there. No, you're just removed from the race. And that's, of course, it's something we have to try to avoid, because also the older age groups are an important part of every event. So that's why Björn decided to have the women start first and then the men elite in the back. But there was also criticism at that time from the men elite. So it's not an ideal situation, but we hope by growing the series and by having, if you have a race with 2,500, 3,000 riders, of course you have other things you have proven in the past to tell the police and the cities and the regions where you are organizing, hey, can we have a 1 hour and a half road closure or a 2 hour road closure? It's easier to talk to them if you can come with 2,500 or 3,000 riders compared to a smaller event with 500 riders. But that's the challenge. But I agree. I totally agree with you that it should improve. What happened in Gravel 150 was not correct. The main challenge there is the flat races. As a women elite, I can imagine that it's very frustrating when there is a small hill and or even on a flat part and you can escape and you get a 20-second, 30-second gap, and then 20 kilometers later you see your competitor in a wheel of a stronger man age group being brought back to your wheel, and then she beats you in the sprint. It's super frustrating. It's mainly in flat races, because in hilly races I can imagine that if you're stronger, you can make the difference. It's much more one by one. But it's a challenge. It's indeed something I was planning, and I had already planned to do it earlier this month, but it's still on my to-do list to send out a survey amongst all the riders, but also specifically to the women, to ask them what for them is the ideal situation for a starting procedure. Because I'm also curious to hear what do other big series do, like the Lifetime series. How do they organize their starts?
Yeah, there's usually a much more significant gap between the different categories. And as you alluded to, I do understand that, of course, there is some sort of regulation from the governments. But I think because you mentioned statistics and you mentioned that you look at the speed, the average speed, which I appreciate. But I think if we would look at the statistics, we would also see that I think it's rarely the women who finish last at the World Series races. There's still age groups that take significantly longer to complete the route. So I think, placing them later and more separate, especially on the flat races, from the lower age groups, I think is definitely the right way to go. But still, the intervals just between the age groups need to be bigger, because then, especially if an age group from behind catches the women's elite peloton, they're mostly more like separated, and it's then smaller groups, because especially at the Gravel 150, the issue came in play. And for me, fairness is one point, and I think it's super important as a professional racer. But now speaking for all women and the age group women, it's more like this safety of being overrolled by a peloton of 70 people that go like maybe 4 or 5 kilometers per hour faster than your own peloton. And that's like where the really nasty crashes happen, and I think these situations need to be avoided. And I'm happy to hear that there's awareness, but I think for me it's also super important, and for the other women, that there's some sort of communication. I think, for instance, as you said, like the Grelog, the race in Wales, they're having like completely separate women races, but that maybe the UCI, or from your side, from the Gravel World Series, that you give some more credit to these events. So maybe to even specifically highlight them on the webpage as these have like separate race days, or these are women's only races, that people can more actively choose these races, and that they get a credit, or that you at least communicate the intervals, or that the organizer kind of has to submit the intervals for the race to you in advance of the race by at least a week, or like ideally a month, so that the racers can make a decision.
No, communication is key in this. And that's what I mentioned. We are only existing for 4 years. It's growing super rapidly, and it comes with. I don't know if it's the real English word, but you probably understand as a German speaking, but like a children disease. So by growing too fast, we have to acknowledge that certain things are not happening the way we want. What we will for sure forbid is, initially we thought, okay, men elite first, small interval. Like, I don't know, Rosa, if you did the European Championships, the very first one in Belgium, but Paul did, because he was on the podium, I remember, where Jasper Stuyven won, and then Tim Merlier, and you were third?
Yeah, it was third,
Yeah. So that race, we put the men elite first, 1 minute later the women elite, and then 1 minute later the men 90 to 34. But of course, the men 90 to 34, at least the top of the field, the best riders there are faster than the women elite, because they are often elite 2, so the elites without a pro contract. And at that time, we thought, okay, this is how it should be, because it was live on television at that time. So we have to bring the women and men elite close to each other. They are in front, and then the age groups behind. We've learned from that that was not the ideal situation, because it creates very dangerous situations when people pass the women elite. So in last year, we often did the women elite, depending a bit on if it's a flat course or a hilly course, in between the men 55, 59 and 60, 64. But even there, you have very slow men 50, 59 that you will quickly catch. And you have faster guys from the back who also catch a lot of women elite who are not racing for first position. It's a challenge. I think we should push to have, for sure, a bigger interval before and after the women elite. That's the first objective. Try to position them somewhere in between and push. Well, in the ideal world, next year we have Saturday women elite and Sunday men elite. That's where we are trying to go towards. But of course, 2 separate days comes also with a lot of additional costs. Police is not, or road traffic management is super expensive. And if you have to close down roads for 2 days.
I mean, that is
and I think we totally hear this. Yeah,
like Rosa, what you described here. I think it started 2 years ago in the bigger gravel races that they separated the women's and the men's starts, and now they many, just by increasing the time gap between all the groups, found a sweet spot. And like Rosa touched on it with respect to TV, but I think from a fan's perspective, and as somebody who follows all the gravel racing of all the organizers to the extent that it's possible, which in the case of the UCI series is sadly not that much, hasn't been so far. We are we are going to see more of it, as we found out. But I can tell you that the women's racing this year was, in my book, more entertaining than the men's racing, and at least on a very close level. So it's a great product. And one of the takeaways that I had earlier this year, and now with the announcement you already made, you prove me wrong in this, but I phrased it like, it seems to me that the UCI, you at Golazo, are mostly looking at gravel as a mass participation sport and less as a spectator or a sports entertainment product. And of course, once you bring it to TV, that changes. So I've been wrong there. But last season, it had the vibe, the feel as an observer, that it was more about the races on location and so on. And I think to an extent that is also fair, because the business model, following the money, always makes a lot of sense. And so you and the UCI, you have some kind of contract, whatever, you don't need to tell the details, but either fixed fee, ref share, or whatever. And then you have two business models. One is the license fees that the race organizers pay to you, and then there is sponsorship. Like now you have the Panna Racer Race King deal this year, and you had others last year. So these are the ref streams. If I mean, correct me whenever I'm wrong, but I would assume that the license fees are above 50% of the revenue that you make. So it also having more events makes sense from a growth and a business standpoint. Maybe you even have goals, and the UCI wants that you hit certain goals and so on. And that is the setup that is there. And now with TV coming, that means you suddenly have like a second media revenue stream that is almost its entirely own business, and also has different, like it follows a different structure. Like you don't need more events, but you need a better product. Like
no,
because
I
assume
will
it's
for
the
sure.
right
Well,
field.
yeah, but one thing to just make things clear: TV is not bringing in money. TV is costing a lot of money. Yeah? It's not that we get TV rights from the producers. We have to pay to bring races live to television. So it's we are not football yet, unfortunately. Where people pay a lot of money to bring to buy the rights to broadcast it. No, broadcasting a live TV or like the World Championships to bring them live to television is more than €100,000. To give you an example, it needs to come from the budget from the organizer, and what you
and you
mentioned,
offset it with sponsorship, I suppose. That is the calculation there needs to be like the increase in sponsor attractiveness for the sponsors.
Of course, that's by bringing races live on television, we hope, of course, to attract more sponsors in future years. Of course, but even to cover it with so much extra sponsors at this moment, it's more an investment in future years, and therefore at this moment, I think the major income from all different organizers. Apart from, let's say, the few very professional sports marketing companies, but most of the regular organizers, I think 75-80% of their income model is still registration fees. It's not from sponsors. As long as it was not live on television, sponsors are willing to pay a few €1,000, maybe €10,000, but then you have a very big sponsor. And a bit from cities, but the main income comes from registration fees, and therefore the age groups are important. It's I think if you would see the business model from those different organizers, it's quite challenging at this moment. The riders often think, hey, you have 2,000 riders at the start, and we all pay, I don't know, 75 or €80. So 80 times 2,000 riders. But there's also a lot of costs involved. You have all the police. In most countries, you have to pay for road closures, for police help. You have to, the full setup, start finish, sound system, the podium, the screen, everything. It costs a lot of money. So a lot of these organizers are really having a hard time to make it a break even or make a small amount of money, and we are not there that we can sell TV rights for a few €100,000. That's unfortunately not the case yet.
Yeah, I was surprised earlier when you said that you would go this direction, and then like now that you put it, I know these deals also exist. Do you think that it needs to be on TV and that extra invest, like if you produce it live, I mean, you have the production cost and then what the stations charge you to put it on TV. I have the feeling that the YouTube live game in gravel works quite well. And of course, you save a significant amount of money. Did you consider this way to just put it on YouTube?
Yeah. Well, you have two systems. Right? So you have the system of the live broadcast with the satellite connection, with the helicopter, with motorcycles in the race and everything. Which is the most expensive one? It depends a bit from location and what the setup is. If you have fixed cameras but let's say around €100,000 for such a live broadcast. Or you have the system which exists only the last 2-3 years, is the 4G, 5G network, where you have a few motorcycles in the race, no helicopter, maybe a drone. But the big challenge is then that you need a network. Yeah. And often also all these races are ridden in remote areas. I can imagine that if you race the Gralloch in those woods, there's no network. The connection got lost, and so therefore, it's not possible everywhere. Even in most races, a part of the course is in a very remote area where there's no cell phone network. So that's the big challenge.
I think the game changer, why we saw this boom actually this year, is because Starlink it changed this, because it improved connectivity, and then more organizers were able to actually pull off live streams. And then one technique, but now we are getting deep in the details of gravel live streaming. But one thing that you often see is like if for instance the men's peloton lead group is in an area where there is absolutely no coverage, then they will show the women's race and so on. So that is because you always, which also makes it complicated, right? Because you have to broadcast two races at once. But at least in that context, that is an advantage. But so your takeaway in the end was that for you it makes more sense to bring it to TV proper.
Well, to TV, then you reach out to a major audience. Then you reach out to millions of people. If you see the broadcasting numbers of the World Championships, they were live in, I think, 47 countries. Of course, then you can also talk to, first of all, cities and regions to invest money, and to sponsors. Live broadcast on YouTube, it's a first step, but it also costs money. If you want to set up a decent TV production, it also costs 30, 40, 50,000 euro. Yeah. And to then only bring it on YouTube for a very dedicated and specialized audience, I don't know if it pays off.
So you mentioned the 100K budget for the world.
Yeah,
does that include production already, or is production on top of this?
No, that's production the satellite system, the helicopter, the full TV crew, set up like a World Championships. It's a crew of 50 people.
Yeah,
TV. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that is like production-wise, it is the biggest production that we saw all year in gravel. So that definitely.
Yeah, but what we hear from all these broadcasters is that people at home really love seeing gravel races live on television. you have cyclocross and mountain bike who are live on television, but they're all from fixed camera positions. So you see a cameraman filming from left to right, and you see a lot of riders passing in mountain bike and in cyclocross. You can, I don't know in mountain bike because that's not my specialty, but in cyclocross you can cover a race live in between 15 and 20 cameras. All fixed position, all on a cable. But to bring them, and then you have the road racing. But road racing, the big classics or the Tour de France, it's on the road and people are used to it. But the images which have been shown now at the World Championships, where you have a motorcycle in an off-road section following like Florian Vermeers and what was the Dutch guy? I forgot his name. Biesterbos. Paul, you can maybe help me.
Yeah.
His first
Yeah,
name.
I know what you mean,
Fritz
but I don't know the name.
No, but it's Biesterbos.
Who was in the beginning? The teammate of Florian Vermeers was with them in the beginning. A German guy.
Niels Pollitt.
Niels Pollitt was there, and then a few others, and those images from where you can feel the speed, how fast people go in an off-road section. You have that feeling in the road racing, but people are used to it. But you don't have that feeling in live cyclocross or mountain bike, because there the camera position is fixed and you only see them from far away as like a spectator on the side of the road. But the feeling, or the images we now broadcasted on at the World Championships, and we also had a few other races in recent years live on television. Yeah, that's super exciting. The helicopter who goes behind it, then you can really feel and see the speed, and people really feel like, hey, I'm also there in the race. And that's what is interesting also. Yeah, people, the broadcast agencies or TV channels are interested because it's a nice product. It's a nice new product and a nice add-on for cycling.
Yeah, you don't need to convince me. I wrote a piece earlier this year where I argued that if it would be presented correctly, I think it is more in tune with the trends and aesthetics of our time than road racing is, because when road racing became big, people didn't travel that much. And like being on the car, on a road, the chateaus in France, that was aspirational. And since decades now, it's all about the outdoors. And that is where gravel racing happens. And I think that is what people aspire to. So there is, I'm convinced it has like the potential for mass appeal by cycling standards, which of course is not like football or the NBA or whatever, but I still think it can, there is potential there. It needs to be levered, and then let's see where it can go and grow. So it's good to hear that you're taking this bet. And
well, it's still in a very early phase, so nothing has been finalized. Of course, we are looking at, first of all, different offers from production companies and see where we can implement it. There's still a big challenge because I always tell people, I often get I'm the guy who has the let's say the sports technical experience, and people always refer to gravel racing is like on dusty gravel roads where you have a wide open road, but I don't know, Paul, if you did Gravel 150 in 2024, you probably saw the images if you weren't there, but there was 250k of cyclocross racing. It was raining the 10 days before the race, and it was like all mud, covered in mud, like you should just go on YouTube and type Gravel 150 2024. There's a very good footage from a rider with a GoPro on his bike riding that race. Well, if we have scheduled a live broadcast at that moment, it's really, really challenging. So, let's see how it goes.
Yeah, but we will keep following and keep watching. That's for sure. Paul, did we not talk about anything that was on our list?
No, I think so. Or I don't think so. No, for me it was like the security aspect, for Rosa the setup with the woman, and also like the future of the series. But yeah, we talked about that at the beginning, so I think I have no further question at the moment, really.
Erwin, do you have something that you still want to address, put out there? Maybe something else that is going to change in the next season that people can be excited about?
No, right. I have one question, Erwin.
Oh.
So like one topic for me is always regarding licenses. I know you're from Golazo and not from the UCI, but you're in close connection to the UCI. Do you think there will be in the future like something we see on the road with like actually pro rider licenses, which including also like insurance and all these things? Do you hear anything from the UCI regarding that? So that you're also like then actually allowed to race in the elite category at the UCI event, that we have there like a further, not separation in the sense of like that you want to kick people out, but like that we make it like really more into a professional sport?
Well, what I know is that the UCI is looking at a system where you can gain UCI points or take UCI points from track, from cyclocross, from mountain bike, and also gravel. At this moment, there's no system of UCI points in gravel yet. We have the start order ranking, which is often considered as a points ranking, but and that a part of that can be taken also to road teams, which is then very good for the top level pro teams to also have one or two riders who from time to time do a gravel race. And it's nice to see that in this past year, well, Marianne Voss was there, Lorena Wiebes did, Marianne Voss was in Aachen, Wiebes did Valkenburg and maybe another race. Who was there too? Tim Welles was in Valkenburg, Florian Vermeers was also there. I see top level riders. Well, Romain Bardet won a lot of races at the end of the season. But it would be good to see also, top level pro riders taking part in between their road races in the UCI Gravel World Series from time to time. That would be really good. And therefore, the live television would, of course, be very welcome. But also to create more media attention in general for the series. That's where we are looking for. Is there a specific license for gravel yet? Well, there is no specific license for mountain bike. It depends a bit on the federation. But as far as I know, in Belgium, there's only one elite license, or you have a master's license or an age group license. There's no specific license per discipline, but I know that there are plans from the UCI to work towards a system that points can be taken to the road and also count for the road ranking, which is also good for the future of gravel.
So this now brought up one more thought on my end, because you talked about the ranking and the point system. And I think from the different topics that we talked about earlier, is one thing is clear. It is not possible in the situation that you're currently in to push hard regulations and requirements in all these different domains on all the organizers, because then you would probably not have a series and definitely not the amount of races that you currently have. So one thing that usually works quite well is like to incentivize people in some way, shape, or form to implement these changes that we all think are beneficial for the ecosystem at large. And like when we look at these points, by the way, I would hope that these become more of a public thing. Last year, it was not public anywhere. So once you make it public, it can become more of a talking point. But they are like in the
regulations are visible on our website. They have been there for the past 5 years.
The real-time point rankings?
The point rankings are also visible on the website. Yeah.
Then you need to show me where offline, because I tried.
If you go on UCI Gravel World Series and then qualified riders, the top two buttons are the rankings, the points rankings for women elite and men elite.
Okay, I will double check, because I know at one time I was looking for just like simple standings and couldn't find it. But then, yeah, if it's makes sense where you put it. Good, duly noted. But anyways, like one system that we saw in the last year's Gravel Earth series is they gave more points for certain events than for others, which brings its own set of complications. But that could be, for instance, one lever how you design a system that you say, look, like we have these events, they are very good in terms of media production, they are very good in terms of safety, they are very good in terms of the women's starts, and these are the marquee races, and that is where riders can earn more points. Like for the elites, doesn't make sense for the age groupers because they just want to qualify. But in that sense, that could be a system to consider in this respect.
Yeah, so one of the things, we have a meeting scheduled with UCI, and of course, because I can give advice, and often they listen to my points and they consider it. But there's also the different national federations behind, which has also been taken into account, and the general UCI regulations, of course. But so what we are. What in my idea could work is have like a few races live on television and have kind of a gold label or whatever with more points or whatever, or even a ranking only for those races, and then have a set of other races where you can qualify for the World Championships, but they don't count for a kind of a World Cup. Huh?
Yeah.
That's things that we can consider, but it's all to be evaluated, to be discussed with the UCI management. One thing which is very important for me, I think, because we didn't discuss it yet, is the start order. The start order at this moment is very important. And in the elite category, so Paul and Rosa, they know we have a priority start box for the best elite riders, and they are part of that priority box. But we also have races. I remember Turnout last year in March, where you have 690 to 34-year-old age group riders, and they are there 2 hours before the race in their start box waiting for a good start position. And that's what we try to avoid, because nobody is happy with that procedure. So what we are working on now is also a point system or a kind of a ranking for the age groups, so that the big events can also use that ranking for a call-up, which takes a lot of resources, because you need, first of all, make up that start order, rider per rider, but also a lot of volunteers and marshals and commissars to do the call-up. It takes a lot of time, but that's what we try to achieve, maybe in the first phase only for the World Championships, but then later also for the bigger qualifier events. And if qualifier events want to reach a high level, then they have to implement it.
Yeah,
that's the next step, and that's also important for me. It's probably not so important for the elites yet, because they already have their start order and the priority box in the qualifier events. But for the age groups, especially the young male age groups, 90 to 34, we have a lot of races with 400, 500, 600 riders at the start, and then it's very stressy for these riders to be in their start box 2 hours before.
Yeah, it gets actually ridiculous at the World Championships, where they started to camp like 2 hours before the start line with like chairs to be at front. Yeah, I think it's good to like implement there also something for them to make life a bit easier, because I think
and this year at the World Championships we already had a system. If you rode podium in one of the qualifier events, you were in the first part of the box. So we had in the different age groups a priority box and a regular box. And the priority box was for those riders finishing 1, 2, or 3 in a qualifier event somewhere in the world. But it's a huge challenge to make up those lists. You have to filter them out, and it took me like the last 2 weeks before the World Championships. Most of my job was working on that, because it was a rather last minute decision, but it comes with a lot of workload.
Yeah.
But we want to automate that system. So we're now working on a system where we can import all results, and then, with a simple click on a button, roll out a ranking.
Yeah. So I guess my last question will be, when we look at like world championships mainly and sometimes European championships, but they're usually not in your hand if you not have to take them over in last minute, like in Italy, I think 2 years ago or something. I think in last year, or like 2 years ago, last year you had to take them over last minute in Italy. It was Golazo who did
World Championships, man.
No, European Championships.
The question was if they could be part of the UCI Gravel World Series 2 weeks before the race.
Okay.
The numbers of participants were very low, so then we put them on our calendars. They had a bit of exposure and communication around it, but yeah, it was a last-minute decision. That's right.
Okay, but so if you look at World Championships, you're usually communicating like in the media with the stars, but the stars are usually like coming from the road or off-road scene, but not from gravel, like most of the time. I was wondering why, like in general, the UCI and also you guys are not start to like push more like the athletes who are actually doing mainly gravel. I mean, we have now a few, I think, stars in the making in the sport, like Rosa Klöser is one of them on the female side, but then on the man's side, but this year, Matthias Lohmann, who was like really impressive at many races, and some other guys like Mats Schmidt and so on. I know you showed them like next, Magnus Baklaris, you showed them next to, like, let's say Pidcock, but these road riders who doing just one race, they're always like a bit more present. I was asking why you're doing that. I know why you're doing it, but I'm also wondering why we're not starting to push more our own gravel athletes and to give them, a bigger platform, which they also deserve.
Yeah, I think this year on the first row of the World Championships, you had 5 or 6 pure gravel riders. So it's not that Pidcock was there because he has a lot of points in mountain bike and on road.
No. Therefore, I don't mean the starting order. I mean like in general the how you communicate beforehand. Like which riders are showing. Yeah, who are the stars for these events? And you often see road riders being really present and like off-road riders are not that present. I know you're putting here and there like a gravel rider in there, but you don't push them as much as like the road riders. No. I get it because Pidcock is bigger than Lohmann. So I do see that.
Yeah, well, that's the main reason. Yeah. Because if Lorena Wiebes or Marianne Voss or Pidcock didn't do a qualifier, but let's say Tim Welles is at the start in Valkenburg. Of course, for the main audience, for the bigger cycling spectators, he's a well-known name, and of course, Lohmann is also a very big name in gravel, but not in the general cycling community yet. It might change now if we can bring some races live to television, which is of course still a concept, but I hope we can achieve it in 26 with a few races. Then these riders who are now the top level riders, Mats Schmidt, you mentioned them. They will also become famous riders. So it's a system that we are building on, but it's goes step by step.
Yeah. So and then, do you think in the future there will be like an obligation to do at least one qualifier race to be able to participate at the World Championships?
Well, we got that criticism in now for the race, the World Championships in South Limburg, but. Look at the women elite. So Lorena Wiebes, she did Valkenburg. She won Valkenburg. She's also the national champion in gravel. Not sure if she did another qualifier event, but Marianne Vos did Aachen. So they already did. And who was third at the women elite?
The
lady,
the Italian rider. Yeah, I know. On the women's side, it's not really
she did the European Championship. So I think top 4 or 5 of the women elite, they all did at least one qualifier. In the men elite, Florian Vermeers did Valkenburg, who was second. Biesterbosch, he did a lot of races. The number 3 was Mohoric. He did Girona 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the World Championships. He also did Unbound, which is not a UCI qualifier.
I get your point. But you also mentioned, I mentioned Pidcock before, and you didn't do. And there like
Pidcock was the only one, yes.
And there are also like a lot of Belgian riders who like coming and like, I don't know, I didn't check everyone, but like there are a lot of riders who didn't do one. And I mean, just in general, it will be nice if like everyone who is there will have done like a race before, just out of fairness. And then also, I mean, like Florian Vermeersch, I think he's the right world champion. You know, I know he doesn't do many races, but like he has done now 3 times world championships. He kind of, when he speaks about it, he feels a passion for it. So I really appreciate what he's doing and what he has done there. But it will be nice if like also the big stars, let's say they have to do a race beforehand. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I understand your point, and I think with live television, they will automatically do more. I know these riders also like to do gravel racing. You remember Wout van Aert doing Houffalize, were you also on the podium with him? He loves to do gravel. He would like to do gravel, and most of them have done at least 1 or 2 races. Speaking about the Belgians, I think most of these Belgians you mentioned also did the national championships gravel. They love to do gravel, but of course it's often also an obligation from the team. And I think in the top 20 of the men and the women elite, there were probably only 2 or 3 riders who didn't do a gravel event before. All the rest did at least a qualifier.
Yeah. And will there be in the future maybe like a lower number of riders per nationality in the elite field? I don't talking about the age group. I think that, it's fine. But like, yeah, just in general, like, do we keep seeing like? I think it's each country has 20 spots. I think, huh? Is it?
Yeah.
And then plus the country who organizes the race, another additional 20?
No, that right? So we lowered it to 10 wildcards per national federation this year. Yeah. It used to be 20 per country and 40 for the home country. Yeah. This year it was 10 for every country and 20 for the home country. Do we lower it? Well, as long as we keep on using the qualifier system, elite riders can also qualify. And do you then say, okay, you qualified early in the season in Castellón as a Belgian rider, but unfortunately there are this and this and this rider also being added. And sorry, now you're not qualified anymore. That's a difficult discussion.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is, and I agree. And there's also like my biggest concern with that, but I'm talking now about the elite, not the age group. It's like, I think to grow the sport in a more professional way, I think at one point there has to be kind of like a cut. I mean, in the women's race, okay, it's just the case, and also in cyclocross, the Dutch women are really strong in off-road racing, obviously. So out of 10, they're like eight from the Netherlands, and to just like make them less strong by cutting things, yeah, it's maybe not a nice way, but like it's maybe to make the race more equal, because some nations are just not as strong as the others. I think to have like a more even playing field would be nice. Also in the men's field, there was like just Belgian riders like on one point in the front. I know they're strong, but it would be cool to have it more equal in the elite field. I'm not talking about the age group, because I think there we should intervene.
But you know, the typical gravel specialists are the riders who are also strong in the spring classics, Tour of Flanders, Paris-Roubaix. Yeah. And there also in Paris-Roubaix, you probably in the top 20, you also see 10 Belgian riders. And in cyclocross, you also have in the women elite, also from the top 10, 7 or 8 Dutch ladies. It's a very strong.
I wouldn't mind if we all race in our own team kits, like in Paris-Roubaix, but we're racing under a national team. And I think that's like if we will change that, which I will love as an elite rider, because it actually pisses me off that I have to ride with a big like bike sponsor on my kit, which is actually not my sponsor, and I have to buy that kit to race the World Championships. Then I would be fine with it, and then I don't mind if there are like 40 or 50 Belgian riders. But if everyone is like kind of like a national kit, even though they're riding against each other, as we have seen in the women's race, but like still, it would be nice to have that bit of like a cut down and say, right, that's just how it. I haven't thought it through, you know, but it's just like I think something maybe can talk about in the future.
I agree with you that the number of wildcards used in the beginning, so 20 for a normal national federation, 40 for the home country, we lowered it now because that was mainly in the beginning to launch the World Championships and to launch the series. We brought it back to 10 and 20, and probably in future years we will even lower it back. But on the other hand, don't underestimate the presence of Mathieu van der Poel, Peter Sagan,
for sure.
in the very first edition. That really launched gravel on a worldwide scale, because without them at the start of the very first World Championships in Italy, which were probably not the best promotion for gravel racing at that time, but anyway, their presence really launched and made the series explode in year 2 and 3.
And it was cool. I don't know if it was the first or second year when Keegan Swenson also came and rode it. I think it was the second year. Yeah. But he finished like in sixth, I believe, or seventh.
Fifth.
He really made it because he came from the back in a rather fast race. Huh? Well, it was not an easy race. It was probably the hardest World Championships we had so far. That's really a pity that the Americans at this moment, they don't come. And they have a lot of, there's a lot of coverage on why are the Americans not there. I think the main reason why they are not there is that they realize that the level in Europe is so high that, it's another level.
I think the top riders from the US are also in the Lifetime Grand Prix, and like I think in the first year when you started, like so you scheduled against them, but nowadays your World Championships or the UCI World Championships are known years in advance, and I just wrote in a few places that I think now they need to adapt and they need to put a schedule where the World Championships are not on the same day as Little Sugar, which is a week before a Big Sugar, which is the big finale of the Lifetime Grand Prix. And I think that is the main reason. Plus, I also think they looked at the course, especially like last year, and there, yes, that is not a course where they can win. I think Australia will be a different animal from what I'm hearing. More US pros are considering.
It's a very hard course. I was there last year, yeah. Well, I think the actual World Championships of this year, it's not the hardest course, but if you're really a strong rider, you can make a difference. And Keegan Swenson is top level. At the time he was sixth in Italy. He was for sure stronger than a lot of European riders. But let's be honest, if you choose to ride Little Sugar instead of the World Championships, well, then you probably have to look in the mirror and say, okay, is this where you have to be to become an icon in your sport?
Yeah, fair enough. I think this question almost goes to a whole nother topic, or can of worms, which I don't know if we want to open it now. But Paul talked about like the stars and the riders in the sport, and I think what has happened in gravel is that it's almost its own universe right now in cycling, and from the races that we were able to follow in the last 1 or 2 years, I think it has a distinct look and feel. And for instance, I'm also convinced that like broadcasts, they need to like mountain bike broadcasts are not like road broadcasts, and I think the same needs to go for gravel. You cannot just put a announcing crew from the road and say, look, now announce this, because there is a certain vibe to these races. You talked about the Grellock, which I haven't been there, but from all the footage I see, I think by far it looks like the coolest. It looks like the by far, but not only like how well it is produced, but also from vibes. In gravel, people like to talk about the vibes, and I think the vibes are high at the Grellock, for instance, and that is pretty cool to see. And now bringing this back to what we were just talking about. Like, I think the discipline needs and can have their own stars. And I also think the one advantage that you, as Golazo, as the UCI, would have, the media ecosystem there, because it grew organically as like a internet cycling discipline. All the riders there are so approachable, and it's very different than on the road, where you have the teams, you have the PR people of the teams who are in charge. And of course, if you look at sports fandom at large, then it's now much more driven by the people than by the teams, the entities. That's true in football and all team sports. And I think that is a real asset. And if you would think about like a series, or the way I think about it is like, it would almost have to be like a digital media business and a talent aggregator. Like give a platform, because many of these riders, they have their own podcasts, they have their own, like Paul, for instance, right? We're here because he had like his own podcast. They have their own YouTube channels, and they create all this media, and this really is something to leverage.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think with hopefully, if we can close the deal for live television, then we get to a next level, and then you'll see the sport grow and but it's still very approachable. It's the road races. Well, it's another level. Let's be honest. It's still another level.
Sure.
But yeah, we want to create the atmosphere which is around mountain biking, around cyclocross, where you can go to the riders' parking, ask for a selfie, ask for a signature, and hopefully we can achieve that step by step in the next few years.
Hey, Erwin, thanks a lot for your time, for chatting through all these topics with us here. It was a pleasure to chat with you. And,
well, it was also good to hear your thoughts. It's always interesting for me also to get feedback from all the different parties involved, and I'm definitely hoping to keep on growing. The success we started, I never thought that it would reach the level we are reaching now. So, and hopefully we can even move it much further.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys. And Paul, all the best for the upcoming season. I don't know where you start your first race.
Yeah, I will start in Santa Val, but then the week later in the first UCI race in Spain, somewhere.
Castellon. Yeah, it's really a very hard one.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, well, best of luck.
So now it's a couple of days after we recorded with Erwin, and I'm still joined by Paul. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Thomas.
Yeah, I thought it's good to end the podcast on a quick segment where we discuss what we learned, what our main takeaways were. Also, probably, obviously, because it's days after Rosa isn't here, you probably heard in the episode that towards the end, suddenly Rosa was gone. As I mentioned in the episode, she had a sponsor appointment and just had to drop out. So in case you were missing her, now you know why. How did it go for you?
Well, I don't know. I think quite okay. It wasn't as controversial as I may thought it could be. And no, I think the talk was all right. I guess he made his points, and yeah, I don't know. Like there are still like a few things which are not really clear for me. But I guess it's also a bit more complicated than we sometimes think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is one thing that definitely came away from the conversation for me too. It's just like there are so many parties involved. But like one thing that became pretty evident to me, interestingly, especially in contrast to a podcast that I just listened to early this morning, where Kevin Vermark was invited by Escape Collective, I think Overnight Success they call it, and he talked about gravel burn. And like if you want to create any kind of new product, including a new bike race or bike racing series, there obviously are economical pressures at work, but there is also like a decision that you have to make between, do you want to be highly product driven, which includes early on investing significantly into the product itself and operating at a loss, maybe for multiple years in a row, if you can afford it, which I don't know the situation of Golazo and the UCI. I don't know if they could afford it or not. But my takeaway or impression was clearly that Erwin, does see a lot of room for improvement, but also has to, for instance, work with all these events just for the economic realities that are.
Yeah.
I mean, that is in the end the takeaway for me. So they decide not to prioritize the highest quality product, which some do, like Kevin Vermaak and Gravel Burn, in what he tells, like he says he has the plan to operate at a loss for 3-4 years before he anticipates to turn a profit. I don't know if they are profitable at the UCI. We didn't go that deep.
But I also think like the UCI, like, I mean, Golazo is getting money from the UCI, I guess. So
Yeah.
maybe like another additional fee if when they're organizing these races or like whatever. But I don't think they're going into any depth with that.
Yeah, Golazo not. But somebody would have to, if you wanted to build like this.
Yeah, but how it's structured at the moment and the numbers I hear organizers have to pay, I don't see that it's actually for either for the UCI or Golazo like a depth game. It's more like they're just training the organizers, and I think the organizers are the one who are actually struggling, and they have to think about like if they want to go into depth for the next years to build a bigger event. But I don't see that on the UCI side, and also like everything Erwin said, it doesn't seem like, of course, they say they want to make television like, I don't know, next year for 10 races and so on, but it sounded like that has to be funded by the races then. And then again, the UCI comes in with like some main sponsors. I mean, the new next year called Pana Racer UCI Gravel World Series, or Gravel King or whatever. So I don't know. It all seems to be really like let's get the organizers, train them, and then But it doesn't seem to be like a big business plan behind it, like, and also like for the foreseeing future where you see, that's how we want to develop the sport to make it profitable for everyone. Yeah.
What is your take on the plans to bring gravel to TV?
I mean, it's good. I like that idea, and I have done now a few European Championships and World Championships which have been televised, and I think that was always a success. And they were not streamed; they were like in Eurosport and so on. So I think that's a really good idea. But again, who's paying for that? If the organizer is paying for it plus the fee they have to pay, suddenly it's quite a big amount of money there. They have to get from somewhere, and the banner, like, it just sometimes feels for me like the UCI is there and just benefiting from it. They're getting the fee from the organizers to organize these races. Golazo gets money, but then the race organizers are kind of alone to get the fundings together to support all of this. And maybe the start money will be higher in the future. I mean, now it's usually always around €100. It feels like at every race. So I don't know. It's at the moment I thought a bit about it. The only sustainable concept I see at the moment is a bit Lifetime Grand Prix. Even Gravel Earth Series, it feels a bit like they really took a totally wrong turn. And so I don't know. It feels all a bit up in the air at the moment, to be honest.
And the Lifetime Grand Prix like we have no clue whether or not that is already profitable or not, or if for the time being, at least, it is mostly a marketing investment of lifetime, the gym operating brand or company. Potentially, it is still something that is operating at a loss, but has, I think, the potential to be turned into something profitable in its own right. Yeah, it's the situation we are currently at. I mean, I still have to say I'm thankful that Erwin took the time, was addressing all these questions, which not everybody does in the industry, to come on to talk through this. But yeah, not everything is like optimal, and not everything is going to improve in the way that I think it should, or at least not as quickly as it should.
Yep. But yeah, I guess we have to wait and see what the future will bring. Yeah. But there are certainly a few topics they have to sort out. And we also talked about like the whole security bit, and then are actually women getting their own races or not in the future. So I think there are still a lot of things to do before we should talk about TV, to be honest. Yeah.
On that note, thanks to you. Thanks to everybody listening. If you like what we do, then don't hesitate to leave a rating, preferably 5 stars. Comment if you listen to this on Spotify or on YouTube, then do that. The algorithms like interactions, and we depend on the algorithms. So thanks a lot, and talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.